Weed Snuggerud. The deflection for Suter just missed. Deflected back. Snuggerud. He scores! Jimmy Snuggerud. What a goal as he was backing up to snap it in. 1-0 St. Louis. Blues launch it ahead. Partial break. Kyrou. Hughes catches him. Kyrou hits the trailer. Shen. Score! 17:50 to go. Second period. Jordan Kyrou to Shen. 2-0 St. Louis. What a play to hold it in at the line. Shoots it. Binnington the save.
Go, go, go.
And the Blues force it out with numbers. 3-on-2. Texier in the trailer. They score! Walker. The 2-goal lead is back. 4-2 St. Louis. Lekamaki.
Nice and tight.
Roenick far wing. Slap shot blocked by Neighbors. To the empty net. Score! 5-2 as Jake Neighbors sends it all the way down. 2:13 remaining in the third.
Remember that time? Man, it feels like forever ago. What was it? October 9th? Oh, man. Such a calendar. You know, when Blues didn't score against Minnesota and everyone was like, maybe the offense isn't as good as we thought it was going to be. Well, in 2 games, they figured out the offense, I guess. More importantly, they stayed out of the damn penalty box, which I think was massive for this Blues team to get to their even strength play. Welcome, everyone, into our fourth period. It's presented by First Community Credit Union, Scott Lee Heating Company, and Urban Chestnuts Zwickle Light. Alongside Jordan Deacon and Grant Francis, I'm Alex Ferrario as the Blues take down the Vancouver Canucks 5-2. I apologize for the sarcasm. Early on in the season, it gets to me very early. But an impressive win by the Blues. A Vancouver Canucks team that I don't want to say is expected to be a juggernaut in the Western Conference this year. I think they're probably in the same tier as teams like Calgary, you know, teams that are fringe playoff teams that hope they can make a push. And no disrespect to Vancouver, they got a good lineup. I mean, you've got DeBrusk, Pettersson, Besser, Kane, Chytil, Garland in the top 6. That's a really good top 6 to have. And you still have Quinn Hughes on your roster, but they just weren't there tonight. And I thought the Blues the Blues made them look inferior in the first 2 periods. Now, credit to Vancouver. They had some pushes at different points of this hockey game. But, man, overall, it's just felt like the Blues always had the puck, always in the offensive zone. Now, the third period, Vancouver made their push, which was expected when you're down by 2 goals. But credit to the Blues to hold on and then pick up that empty net goal. So we got lots to get into. We'll hopefully hear a little from Jim Montgomery out in Vancouver, get his thoughts on the Blues' victory and 2 wins out in Western Canada. We'll get to that hopefully in just a bit. We'll also have our final look brought to you by Pure Performance and our look ahead as the Blues come home for a 4-game homestand. We'll get to all of that on the other side, but now let's go right into our Ted Drew's 3 takeaways.
It's time for tonight's 3 takeaways, presented by Ted Drew's Frozen Custard, a St. Louis tradition for over 95 years. Unmatched quality, unforgettable taste.
The first takeaway for me is why I had Jordan come back with those highlights of goals by Jimmy Snuggerud, by Braden Shen, by Nick Bukestad, and by Jake Neighbors. All 4 lines contributed tonight, and I really think that's the difference in this game compared to the other 2. You know, the game against Minnesota, you had your offensive chances, but it was just so hard to stay at even strength, and you just didn't have those bottom 2 lines. There wasn't enough chemistry going. They had to break it up. You saw Snuggerud dip down there. It just was a lot of in and out. The Calgary game, you had Thomas's line performing very well with Jake Neighbors. You had Pius Suter's line, which I think at one point it was Matthew Joseph with Pius Suter and Nathan Walker. That line was rolling for you at times in Calgary. This game tonight, from start to finish, it was every single line. I mean, that was really the beginning of this hockey game. Vancouver couldn't get the puck out of their own end. It started with 1 line, and then it just poured on line after line after line. I think it started with the Kyrou line, then went to the Thomas line, then went to the Pius Suter and Jimmy Snuggerud line, then went to that Walker, Bukestad, and Texier line. And it was just nonstop opportunities for the Blues. Like, you look at the line combinations tonight, Corsi rating. Here's the line combinations and the Corsi rating for every one of them. Leading the way was Texier, Bukestad, and Nathan Walker at even strength. They had a 69% Corsi rating, which, for those that don't know, measures puck possession with offensive zone time and offensive opportunities. After that, The next best line was Jimmy Snuggerud, Pius Suter, and Matthew Joseph. Then it was Neighbors, Thomas, and Buchnevich. And actually at the bottom of this list was Dylan Holloway, Braden Shen, and Jordan Kyrou. And that line that was at the bottom of the list actually scored the goal for you. But man, scoring chances, 11-4 for Pius Suter's line, 5-0 for Bukestad's line. High danger chances, 8-2 for the Pius Suter line, 4-0 for the Nathan Walker line. Tonight, your lineup was stretched, and this is what we talked about in pregame with Joey, and I saw a lot of people that were upset that, Snuggerud was taken off of that top line. Oh, what does that say if Snuggerud's not up there right now? Neighbors is up there. I don't know if you have a top line. Joey mentioned it, and I agree. I don't think the move of Snuggerud had anything to do with Snuggerud's play and everything to do with wanting to open up the lineup, open up scoring opportunities for more guys. Try and get those matchups when you're on the road. And that's what they did tonight. They were able to get the positive matchups that they wanted with Jimmy Snuggerud playing with Pius Suter. It was a line that really had the chemistry that I agree. Matthew Joseph was kind of like an engine for that line out there. But then, while people are focusing on the Holloway and Kyrou line, well, now you've got the Thomas line that's been rolling a little bit. And then you get the Pius Suter line. And then you get the Nathan Walker line. This team, in my opinion, is and will be at its best when they play 5-on-5 and when they can roll four lines. And I know everybody who says that cliche saying, but when you're a pack mentality roster, rather than rely on your superstars to lead you, that pack mentality is what gives you the upper hand, because on any given night, you have a matchup that works in your favor. And tonight, I thought it was the Pius Suter matchup. Next game could be Texier's matchup. Next game could be Holloway's matchup. But it was four confident lines tonight for Jim Montgomery that I would imagine he's going to tell you afterwards we had no problem playing anybody. Like, you just go through the line, the minutes on the ice tonight. 18:52 for Robert Thomas. He played 24 shifts. Pius Suter, 17:05. He played 23 shifts. You had Nathan Walker's line playing 16 shifts, 10:31. You had Braden Shen's line playing 15:51 and 20 shifts. Everybody was within 3 or 4 shifts of each other. So that was advantage for the Blues tonight to have that one. Second takeaway for me. The 6-on-5, and I understand it's only 2 games and it's against Calgary and Vancouver. But the 6-on-5 play is encouraging late, because that's back-to-back games that the Blues just have not limited or had not allowed a lot of dangerous plays. And what I'm noticing with it, and this will be something I look forward to talking with Jim Montgomery about when they return home, what I'm noticing with it is layers. Like, if you go back and watch that Winnipeg Jets game, they were spread out. They were trying to be overly aggressive and chase down pucks. But now it's like they have this tower in front of Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer, to where you've got the first layer of a player that's chasing the puck wherever it's going. The next layer is a group of forwards right around that faceoff dot. And then the next layer is your defenseman. And you're basically telling the opposition, get through these 3 layers and try and beat our goaltender. Whereas before, it was so spread out and it was aggressive that you just had to beat the layer that was in front of you, and you're going to the front of the net. So it's an encouraging sign, especially for 6-on-5, that I think a lot of people were concerned about at the end of the season last year, going into the playoffs. And then, of course, once they got to the playoffs, again, I'm not going to sit here and act as if it's fixed, but it's definitely more encouraging now than where it was at, last year going into the postseason. So something to keep an eye on moving forward. But, man, critical if you can start getting comfortable in those 1-goal games or 2-goal games, because you wipe away the competition that tries to pull themselves back into it. And tonight, even though Vancouver outshot the Blues 10-6 and the scoring chances were significantly in Vancouver's favor in the third period, I thought the Blues were very calm, cool, and collected in those final 2.5 minutes at 6-on-5. And then the third takeaway from me tonight is the special teams play. I've been very impressed by the penalty kill tonight. 1 for 1. Doesn't take a whole lot of penalties, which is a good sign for the Blues considering what they did in the last 2 games. But, I mentioned this in pregame. You came into this game 7 for 9 on the penalty kill. And the 2 goals that were given up on the penalty kill were 2 plays that, not to take anything away from the other team, but they were lucky plays. I mean, the Eriksson Ek one that bounces off a crossbar and bounces right into his stick in the crease behind Binnington. Nobody else there. Maybe you could say defensive breakdown there, but still, it's a really good bounce. And then the other game against Calgary, Coronado scores it off of a puck that just clears through the crease and bounces off of Tyler Tucker skating into the net. Otherwise, you might be talking about a penalty kill that's perfect right now. And tonight, you allowed 2 shots on goal on the power play for Vancouver. But if you go over to natural stat trick and you go 5-on-4 for the Canucks, they had 1 high danger scoring chance out of all of that. And your best penalty killer is your goaltender. So they're going to give up goals on the power play. It's going to happen. But what I think is so good about this penalty kill is they've got depth. Like, you've got 3 different pairs of players that you can use on the penalty kill. Like, just go through it tonight, shorthanded. You had Robert Thomas play on it. You had Pius Suter play on it. You had Nathan Walker play with it. Matthew Joseph. You also had Nick Bukestad out there. Pavel Buchnevich. And I didn't even mention Oscar Sundqvist and Alexei Toropchenko, who aren't even in the lineup. So an area of the game that is significantly improved from where they were a couple of years ago. And then the power plays the other factor onto it. Back-to-back games with the power play goal. The passing is there. It's just getting the shot off quick and bodies in front of the net. And I think they're going to get to that point where the chemistry's flowing. But you've got 2 dangerous units at special teams for the Blues. So both areas, something that I truly believe feel like they're trending in the right direction. It's just continuing to build off of that with confidence. And it does feel like the Blues are playing confidence right now following that 5-0 loss to Minnesota, which in all reality, it's a 5-0 loss against Minnesota that 3 goals, you'd look back and be like, nothing you could do about that one. So a tight game that the score doesn't really justify. You get the win versus Calgary in a tight game that you held on to and then pulled away in the third period. And then tonight, you just never gave up the lead. Those are building blocks if you're a team. And I think it was an impressive win for the Blues, and impressive to come home from a Western Canada road trip, which I know was only 2 games and it was the early portion of the season. But to pick up 4 points through Calgary and Vancouver, it's a really good thing to put in your back pocket and bank it later on into the season. So those are my Ted Drew's 3 takeaways. As always, we want yours. You can send them over via text 314-399-9646. You can also send them over on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. We'll get into your Ted Drew's 3 takeaways, your questions, your thoughts coming up next. Hopefully hear a little from Jim Montgomery, and we'll have our final look before we close it down on the 4th period here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN.
Welcome back to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show, presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut on 101 ESPN.
Final time tonight here on our fourth period, presented by First Community Credit Union, along with Jordan Deacon and Graham Francis. I'm Alex Ferrario as the Blues defeat the Vancouver Canucks 5-2. 2 goals tonight for Jimmy Snuggerud, which Grant looked this one up, and the trivia wizard that he is. Don't be surprised if you hear this later on down the road. The last players to score a hat trick at the age of 21 for the Blues happened 2 other times in the last 30 years. It was Robbie Fabry in 2016, and it was David Perron in 2009. And we looked this one up. Jimmy Snuggerud stays 21 until June 1st. So as long as Snuggerud scores a hat trick at some point this year, he will join that company with David Perron and Robbie Fabry. So hopefully we'll hear a little from Jim Montgomery before we get out of here. But before we do that, a couple of ones I wanted to touch on the comments page over at our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Also over on our text line, Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. This one coming from Aaron saying, Alex, I thought Texier had a really good game, liked his forecheck and his puck retrieval, gave a little skill on that fourth line. I thought he was noticeable tonight, and that's a really good thing to get. You know, this was the one thing that Jim Montgomery talked about with Texier. I asked him at practice, and I said, you know, when Texier's at his best, what does he look like? He said, elite skill, elite shot, elite hockey sense on the ice. And I said, does that match the identity of what you want on the third line? And he said, that plays anywhere. And, you know, originally you kind of hear it and you're like, yeah, but not cracking the top 6. So it's either the third line or the fourth line. And I think we have this, I'm guilty of this. We have this impression of a fourth line being a heavy, hard-hitting line that just forechecks like what Fox, Toropchenko, and Walker did last year. And that's not a wrong thing. I think that's an effective fourth line. I also think if you can put skill on your fourth line, it makes you that much more dangerous. Gone are the days of having 2 guys on the fourth line that play 5 minutes and then you never see them. Like, some fourth lines have skill. Florida last year's fourth line had skill. And Texier has that. And tonight, I thought he was noticeable on forecheck, and he was really good through the rush in the neutral zone. And that was another thing that I didn't even mention in our Ted Drew's 3 takeaways. Man, the Blues, dominated that neutral zone play today. Every time they were off to the races through the neutral zone, it was Vancouver trying to catch up with them. I mean, you think of the goals that they scored. Snuggerud's goal through the neutral zone. Schenn started in the neutral zone. You had Bukestad's goal, started in the neutral zone. They've got speed that can generate offense off of the rush, but then you also have the net front presence, whether it was Bukestad's deflection, Snuggerud hanging around the front of the net, both times on his goal. So that, to me, is where Texier can be effective. If you go out there against a fourth line, and he played 9 minutes and 5 seconds tonight, he didn't have a shot on goal, took 1 shot attempt, missed the net, but he picked up an assist. He can create offense. And if you're on a fourth line with a big body like Bukestad and a hard worker like Nathan Walker, it's how you can find some opportunities out there on the ice and create some offense and give yourself a little bit more confidence as the season goes on. This one from Tyler. It's getting that third line going, rewarding neighbors, and giving Mayu that Broberg safety blanket. That was Monty mixing it up in the game, and we'll still give those guys demoted plenty of ice time. And he put demoted in quotes, which I appreciate. That was the other thing. The decisions by Jim Montgomery were very noticeable. I mean, your third line, we've talked about Suter and Snuggerud, giving Neighbor that opportunity, which don't overlook giving Neighbors that reward to play on the top line and how it motivates the other players. They see that, man, one game, you could go from being on the third line to the top line. But the Mayu thing as well. I think people saw Broberg and saying, wait, Broberg's your third pair defenseman? Broberg played the 4th most ice time tonight. Falk actually played a lot of game tonight. 24 minutes and 42 seconds. Had a lot of power play time, some penalty kill time. Played 21:39 at even strength. They didn't play Colton Parayko as much. He played 20 minutes and 21 seconds. It was Falk, Parayko, then Fowler, then Broberg. But yeah, Mayu played 12 minutes and 13 seconds. He played 11 fewer shifts than Philip Broberg, and he played 7 fewer shifts than Tyler Tucker. But let's also remember that this is a guy that coming into the season played 8 NHL games. It's a player that Jim Montgomery has said, look, we're going to make sure he's great at 5-on-5 play before we worry about other responsibilities. It's a player that Doug Armstrong said, we're going to give him 200 games, or we're going to not evaluate and judge him that quick off of what he does. You know, defensemen, according to Al McInnes, don't really hit their prime until they play 200 games in the NHL. So, yeah, maybe you saw Mayu on the third pair, and maybe you wondered what's going on here. But I think this is the slow play here, and Logan Mayu wasn't bad tonight. Logan Mayu wasn't noticeable tonight, but I think that's a good game for a young player who's playing third-line minutes in a team that just picked up a win in the game. So let's hear from Jim Montgomery. I think we have some audio from him out in Vancouver. Jim Montgomery after the 5-2 victory.
Let's rock and roll.
All right, let's roll. Monty, did you like the resiliency you had? Every time Vancouver scored, you guys came back and regained the lead?
Yeah, I liked our response. You know, like the shift after a goal is something we talk about as part of our attitude and game management, and we did a good job of it tonight.
Okay. What did Snuggerud do so well tonight to be so effective?
No, he just worked. You know, he was all over pucks. He was tenacious on pucks, hounding them, and then obviously that release is pretty special on the first goal. And the second goal, he's where you score goals, right around the net.
And what went into the decision to move him to a different line tonight?
Just, you know, the way the Thomas line finished the last game, scoring a couple of goals in the third, we thought we'd leave the lines the same. Now they scored a couple of goals for us.
On that fourth goal, they credited it to Bukestad. Did you like the way he drove the middle and the energy he gave you there?
I thought that was a really good play. It was a good job in the D zone by them. We broke out 3-on-2, and I just love the way he drove the middle. It's a big part of what we need to do more of to be a better offensive team, and that opened up Walker for the one-timer from Tex.
I mean, you were able to get out in transition, it felt like, pretty well tonight. Like, what was it that allowed you to do that?
I thought we were in good lanes defensively. I thought our sticks were better defensively, and that caused turnovers, which led to us being able to see that we had time to go north.
It's time to take a look back at tonight's game with the final look.
Driven by Pure Performance. Only stop for all your aftermarket vehicle needs.
So let's do the final look. You heard Jim Montgomery say there. Another thing that we really didn't mention, because there's a lot to get into with this one, you know, the reaction and the response from the Blues. They're right. Every time Vancouver scored, the Blues responded less than 3 minutes following, and then 1 minute and 33 seconds after Vancouver scored. That's a really good, mentally strong game by the Blues in this one. And then he explains to you the Snuggerud and the neighbors. You know, the way that neighbors line ended, you wanted to see if it could generate offense, and instead you got another line out of it that built some chemistry up, and you hope that just the chemistry continues to build for all of those guys as they play together. But overall, just a really strong performance by the Blues from top to bottom. Sure, there were some hiccups, D-zone turnovers. I think the Blues had more D-zone turnovers than Vancouver in this one. It was 12-7 in favor of the Blues. Odd man rushes. Vancouver had 3 of them. The Blues had 1 of them. And Vancouver had a lot of scoring chances compared to the Blues. But all of those were on top of the fact that the Blues, for a large portion of the first period, a large portion of the second period, and really the game was out of hand. I don't even know, out of the hand's not the right word because it was a 2-goal lead, but the Blues played a little bit more on their heels than they did their toes, but their goaltender came up big for them in that third period. Overall, it was a very strong performance by the Blues that dominated puck possession, had more scoring chances, more high-danger scoring chances, and they got contributions from all 4 of their lines. And you wrapped up a 2-game road trip out in Western Canada with 4 massive points, 2 massive wins, which will be very meaningful as the Blues continue to move on in the early portion of the season and try and rack up as many wins as possible. But now they get to come home for 4 games, and they get some tests in those 4 games. Wednesday night will be against the Blackhawks. And then they'll get a couple of days off. They'll take on the Dallas Stars on Saturday, and then a couple of days off, and then take on LA, and then take on Utah. So 4 straight home games, all against the Western Conference. 3 of those 4 against the Central Division. And Wednesday starts it off against the Chicago Blackhawks. Connor Bedard and company roll into town. And Chicago Blackhawks, by the way, currently leading the Utah Mammoth 2-1 with 6.5 minutes to play in the third period. Chicago on home ice. And by the way, the Minnesota Wild, we did that one earlier for you. They were up 3-0. It's 3-3. That one's in overtime with 2 minutes left to play. The game on Wednesday against Chicago, 8:30 puck drop for the Blues, which means our pregame is at 7:30, and we'll have all of that extended pregame coverage and postgame coverage right here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN. It'll shut it down for us tonight. Appreciate everybody's comments on YouTube, viewing on YouTube, and of course joining in on the text line and over on our Twitter account at Ferrario101 ESPN. Shout out to Jordan Deacon, who did an outstanding job tonight as our producer. Grant Francis helping us out as well. I'm Alex Ferrario. Hope everyone has a great rest of their night. 5-2 the final score. Blues take down the Vancouver Canucks, 2-1 on the season, and they'll see if they can string 3 wins together on Wednesday when they take on the Blackhawks right here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN.
Thanks for listening to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show, presented by Scott